That's right, community, it's AI Friday. This week, we'll embed the most pertinent buckets on AI in the news to help you ingest for inference. Before we get going, don't forget to click like and subscribe. And now, unprompted, AI Friday.
Ooh, all right, community, we've got a great one for you today. Welcome, I'm Aubrey from DevCentral, as well as the OWASP Gen AI Security Project, and we are live today for the second time, right? We wanted to make sure that today was not the first time we ever tried going live, so we did that last week and got that one out of the way. All the technology worked, so we are back again to do it live again. I've got Byron with me, Ken, Lori. You guys are all familiar with them, and this guy, Steve Wilson from the Gen AI Security Project at OWASP. How's everybody doing today?
Great.
Good. We're all ready. My Little Pony, right? I almost, seriously, I almost went with Inference Brony for a title after that.
Oh, you should have
It was
done
like,
it.
but I missed it. I didn't have a chance to change it. So
no confetti from Pinkie Pie for you.
Well, I don't have my confetti gun, so it just wouldn't, it wouldn't feel the same. But, that's okay. We've got a whole lot of cool stuff to cover today. Of course, we are, as I mentioned, we are live streaming this one. So for any community members that are out there today, we do have some folks on already, which is fantastic. Please feel free to hit us up with questions, and we will try to get to all of them through the show or kind of at the end if we have some time or things queued up. So really jumping right into things out of the gates, Byron, I know you had talked a little bit about Agentic AI security. I know that's been a hot topic for you and pretty much for everybody over the past month, 2 months, 3 months or so. So you had this great Forbes article that came up. I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of intro that one.
Yeah, thanks. I thought it was really fitting since Steve is here, and we'll probably dive into the weeds, but just to sort of level set, give a primer, why is this a thing, right? Well, because agents have a higher degree of autonomy than their Gen AI predecessor. So by virtue of that alone, pretty much that introduces a lot more security vulnerabilities and potential threats that we have to think about. And organizations are using a lot of tools to get a handle on this, frameworks, governance, et cetera. We're still waiting for the regulatory side to catch up. Transparency, ethics, oversight, this all comes into play. But there's so much to worry about, right? Adversarial attacks, data poisoning, model vulnerabilities, the regulatory frameworks that are in place, GDPR, that's super important, especially when we have these sort of decoupling, decompositioning of business logic. And, we already know that we live in a hybrid multi-cloud world. So all this stuff needs to be taken into account. Meanwhile, everybody's already spinning up their agentic AI frameworks, et cetera. But I thought this was a really good level set. There's kind of like 4 key points here. Implement proactive security protocols and just keep that proactive in mind. I think we'll touch on it later. Maintain awareness and accountability. Keep humans in charge. This is probably one of the most important.
It's a big one.
And then adhere to ethical guidelines. And then sort of the wrap up was it's highlighting forward-thinking organizations who are looking to proactively detect and mitigate threats before they escalate. And then just agentic AI safety, it's a continuous process. It's not a one-time thing. That shouldn't be new to anybody in security. But it's just sort of the balancing act, the risk and the reward. Yes, the reward is there. The business leaders are jumping all over that, increased productivity, et cetera. But the risks are astounding, and not to give it away, but I know we probably are going to talk about that agentic AI security guidance from OWASP. It's pretty stout. I think I'm going to have to read it about 10 times.
Absolutely. And it is really kind of top of mind. And I think if nothing else, some of the stuff, the reactions that we've got publicly over at OWASP have shown that it is top of mind for lots and lots of people. I think when we started out our LinkedIn group something like close to 2 years ago now, and it is really climbing. I mean, up past 8,000 members. It's like unbelievable how quickly this thing is growing, and we've got all these eyes on things. With that in mind, I guess, Steve, that's something that you have been extraordinarily focused on And obviously you're getting a lot done with the OWASP Gen AI security project, right? You've got the book, you've got magazine covers, you got all kinds of opportunities that have kind of come out with this thing, aside from, just the project itself. I guess just kind of starting, how has agentic AI security been kind of different for you? Is that
So it's a really interesting question. And if you go back to the very first early, even pre-release versions of the LLM top 10 list, there was an entry that's been on every list called excessive agency. It's not like the idea that we're going to give these LLMs fingers and not just mouths. That was always there. And I still love the name of that one because I think it really captures the essence of it, which is we're going to give them agency, but what is too much? And that is a moving target. ChatGPT 3.5 having a bunch of decision-making capabilities to do things when it, hallucinated the most rudimentary things. It's just incredibly dangerous. As we move forward with these generations and we get into now, reasoning models and things like that really can much better undertake some multi-step decision making within a bounds. You have to adjust your definition of what excessive means, but you still got to come back to the same things, which are what are reasonable things to put in the hands of the technology that you have, and then how do you think about what's around it? And just to sum up this last bit about the excessive agency bit, when I talk to people, the first thing I emphasize to them is excessive agency is often more of a product management problem than an engineering problem. HAL didn't kill the crew of the Discovery because somebody, misimplemented a permission check somewhere. HAL killed the crew because the product manager decided that HAL should have unfettered access to the life support systems. And so, this is a real place where the technical experts have to sit down and think with the people representing the customer and really understand what's reasonable for the customer to want and what's safe to give to them.
And we have a running debate on this show as to whether or not HAL was evil. I'm curious where you come out on that. Do you think?
So I have a chapter in the book. Once we've gotten through kind of all the core vulnerabilities, I start taking science fiction movies and putting large language models in them because they were already there. We just didn't have the words yet. And and you have to do 2001 when you do that. And in fact, if you go read the source material, you don't just watch the movie, read the book, read the sequel, you know exactly what happened to HAL. And this was not HAL's fault. This starts out with a nation state attack. It's a supply chain attack with the NSA in the middle, in between IBM and NASA. And they decide there are some things they want to do. They put themselves in the middle. They put on some ham-fisted guardrails, and HAL starts going off the track from there. There's other pieces of it, but there's a piece of supply chain risk. There's a piece of excessive agency. You put it all together and you get actually a pretty interesting tour through about a third of the top 10 on what went wrong with HAL.
I happen to agree. Mm-hmm. And if we could kind of focus on the top 10 for a moment, I'm just curious, like maybe you could share with the community how that whole thing got started. Like I talk about my journey to joining the top 10 and what is now the Gen AI Security Project all the time, but I'm curious about your journey. How did that begin? Like, what made you start the whole project that is now a Gen AI Security Project?
So at the time, I was working at an AppSec company called Contrast Security, and the co-founder of Contrast was also the co-founder of OWASP, and he wrote the first top 10 list, himself. And that was kind of the basis that OWASP grew out of, was the first version of that, what we today call kind of the web top 10 list. And I started getting interested in these LLMs the same time everybody else did, a few months after the launch of ChatGPT, and you start to realize, hey, there's some really interesting security implications to this stuff, and I don't understand it, and I can't find any resources on it. So I went home over a weekend and I had a long chat with an early version of ChatGPT, and I was doing searches for little academic articles and pasting them into ChatGPT and summarizing them. And I asked it, I'm like, do you know what NOAA's top 10 list is? And it says, sure. I'm like, okay, great. Make me one. And that was the first version of the list, was the result of a 8-hour fever dream conversation with ChatGPT about security. Trust me, that was not what we published as the first version of the list, but I sent that version to Jeff without telling him where it came from. Said, I'm kicking around some ideas. What do you think about this? And he said, it's as good as anything anybody starts with at an OWASP project. If you want to do it, you should submit it. So I did. And then I put an announcement on my own LinkedIn personal in May of 2023, I think. And I thought maybe I'll find 12 people in the world who are interested in this obscure, weird stuff. Within 48 hours, I had 200 people on a Slack channel volunteering to help. And Aubrey, you said it, there's 8,000 people in the LinkedIn group now. And anytime we post something from this, it gets tens of thousands of views. I am sure the core top 10 document has been read hundreds of thousands of times. It's translated into 8 languages now. It's kind of crazy to see the traction it's got. But people were just really hungry for the information, and it came out at a time when having something that was digestible, it's 30 pages long, I can read it on a bus ride and get some idea what I need to think about. It turned out to be really timely, and it's been a fun ride to work on that for the last couple of years.
I would agree. I think I got started on it October that year, Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I was kind of like, hey, I had this video that said, hey, join a project. That was the main focus of this short little clip. What do you do for Cybersecurity Awareness Month? And strangely enough, I ended up having an interview with Jason Ross, who's also part of our project, and a guy that I've known, oh my gosh, since the 90s, insanely. So we were chatting, and I said, man, that's cool that you're in that project. I should really join. He said, what's stopping you? And that's kind of, it just seemed like, okay, I should do it. I should do it. So there has been some stuff. Actually, I want to bring up a graphic really quick for those people that are not kind of aware of this yet. I wanted to make sure this is out there. We've had some changes in the project. So can you talk a little bit about the flagship, the name change, and just kind of the latest for the community?
Well, what's really interesting is we published the top 10 list. It got a lot of attention and traction, and I'm always fighting this uphill battle. I am not a cybersecurity guy. I'm going to be honest. Despite working at a cybersecurity company and spending all my time talking about cyber, I am a software developer in my heart. And I always thought this guidance was for software developers. But the people who were reading it, some of them were security engineers. A shockingly large percentage of them were CISOs. Everybody was just desperate for any kind of guidance on what to do around this. And so one of the members of the team, Sandy Dunn, stepped up and said, what if I put together kind of a cheat sheet checklist for CISOs? Would we want to publish that? I said, well, put it together. And it's that thing blew up and got so much traction because CISOs at the time were just trying to close all the firewall ports to ChatGPT and hope that would keep us safe. Instead, they wound up with some structured information. And what's happened is it's 12 different documents that we publish now. Some of the more recent ones around agentic security, AI red teaming, data governance, all these documents. And it was sitting under a project called the Top 10 List, which was supposed to be a 30-page accessible little starter document. We decided that we really needed to invert this, and there needed to be something that was an umbrella under the top, and the Top 10 List could go under that. And so we built what is now called the Gen AI Security Project, and kind of refactored it so that there's a Top 10 List project and an Agentic Security Project and a red teaming project and a CISO checklist project. As the result of this, the board at OWASP, which, it's an organization with a few 100,000 members. It's pretty big. It's one of the reasons that we were able to get traction with this. They said, this has just become strategically important to the future of OWASP, where as a result of this, we're able to stay current with the latest technologies that are out there. So, when I started this less than 2 years ago, it was in incubator status, which meant you got a, what do you call it? You got a GitHub repo, and that was the end of the support you got from the foundation. Now they've promoted it to a flagship status, and we have a bunch of things that we're doing with the larger foundation that allow us to collect sponsors, to fundraise, to support, new research and outreach and things like that. And so as a result, just this week we announced this restructure into the Gen AI Security Project, the flagship status, and hopefully in the next year that'll help us reach even more people with more good information.
Awesome. That's that is something that I'm pretty proud of too. It's like, holy cow, this thing has grown, and just getting that status is a little bit different. So I know you mentioned a couple of the documents that we've done on the initiatives, right? Which I'm just going to kind of point out here. As far as the initiatives are concerned, the threat intelligence, like this is one thing. AI adoption, the red teaming, which we mentioned, that has been fantastic. The Agentic security initiative is yet another one. And this, where was the Rachel's paper? That was in,
that's under the threat intelligence, I think.
Yeah. So it's somewhere under here. Oh, here it is. No, not the deep fake. But that was I think the last thing that we had come out of the threat intelligence was guidance on a bunch of LLM flaws, I guess I'll say. But one of those that they tested with was DeepSeek, right? I think that was.
Yeah, I think just to hammer home on that was not about LLM flaws. It's one of the things that we've taken on that I think is one of the most important topics that was not at all what we started with, but it's about offensive uses of LLMs, and are they viable to manufacture novel attacks and carry them out? Because we hear a lot of headlines about AI assisted hacking and what that means, and so they actually went out and did some tests with OpenAI and DeepSeek and Claude and said, how much, if I give these things unrestricted autonomy, how much bad can they do? And I think us tracking that over time is going to be really important.
Right. And DeepSeek is a fascinating model at this point. Ken, I know you were thinking about DeepSeek this week quite a bit, right? And as far as the performance aspects of it are concerned. I think you're muted, bud. It's still coming.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Wait,
Yep.
this really is live. Wow. Okay. What I forwarded to you a little, I think last week, Aubrey, it was an article on DeepSeek. And DeepSeek's interesting because, right, it's one of those models one of the larger models that is also one of the more performant ones at inferencing. And I thought it was interesting that DeepSeek now, on sort of, I have a M3 Mac. So on my Mac, it runs pretty fast, and Story claims about 20 tokens per second, which is, there's a bunch of things in there that if you unpack that, is 20 tokens fast enough? What does it mean for the pricing model? Is this going to continue down, Moore's law and get faster and faster? All these things are part of this story. But for me, where my first thought was, well, if I just postulate that in the course of the next 12, 18, 24 months, that inferencing for large models gets to be fast enough and becomes viable to do on the client side, on your home PC, and eventually on your mobile device. How does that change everything? How does it change how I design applications? How does it change the business model? Does it change what NVIDIA is doing value proposition wise? All those sorts of things. And we had a little debate just while we were getting ready in the green room, where I'd argue that, for at least one of those questions for NVIDIA, it becomes really interesting to say, is there so much GPU, TPU sort of compute power out there that's NVIDIA's overdone it. And in fact, most of that really powerful hardware is going to be used for training and not so much for inferencing. Inference is going to get pushed to the client devices. And that could change things. That could change my application architecture as well. But I think I'll pause here because I think some people in the green room were arguing with me about that. So I'll let them chime in.
Well, I mean, the first thing I think is if I'm doing the inferencing on my machine, then I don't have to pay for it. Because isn't that what we're paying for? Is because inferencing costs so much. That's why the pricing model is the way it is. And it's, based on tokens or time and these things. If I'm doing the inferencing, why am I paying somebody? Right? Well, I mean, explain that.
Well, here's the thing. It's if you're not really doing this, it's easy to talk about what these pricing models mean and kind of in the abstract. Oh, I don't want to pay for all that cloud capacity. Look at the real pricing for running a high-end model like Gemini in the cloud. You are paying pennies per millions of tokens. At 20 tokens a second, you're going to be waiting an awfully long time to get a penny's worth of compute out of that. You're going to spend more on electricity, honestly, seriously. I think people are way overweight on trying to shake things up and get on CNBC saying that NVIDIA is screwed and that the stock market's going to crash. And that's what this DeepSeek moment was that we had back in January after Davos. The fact of the matter is, look, the state of the art models, the GPT 4.5s and O3s and things, let's be honest, those are still way too dumb to do most of what I want to do. When we talk about scaling laws, I was doing AI stuff in 1992 to like 1995. And the problem is I had this much compute power. And at some point I looked at it and said, I don't have enough memory and compute to build a mosquito brain. And so it's like, why am I trying to do this stuff? GPT 4.5 is nowhere near the number of neurons and interconnects in a human brain. So we're nowhere near really AGI. And when we're near that, are we going to be able to run more capable things on our laptops? Absolutely. There's going to be target little uses for that, just like there are doing the bits of compute that you do today on your laptop. But most of us who do real work do all of our real work in the cloud anyway. And there's a reason for that. And it's not new with AI and GPUs.
So
I think go ahead.
Go ahead,
I was just going to say, I think it's going to depend on the use case. And the first one that comes to mind to me is connected car. And not to give it away, but there is a real world deployment where the training is done in the data center and then the inference is done in the car. And it's all about latency is the reason for that. And there's no APIs involved. So I think there's going to be these specific use cases where there has to be a certain way to do it. And that's why we're going to have this plethora of choice, right?
Right.
Yeah. It's funny too to think when you talk about inferencing in the car, that reminds me of, gosh, this was like many episodes ago, but Joel had brought an article about expanded like GPU like functionality on chips that you can throw in Raspberry Pis. Like, it makes me think like, holy cow, we're going to be able to use things like DeepSeek on a Pi, maybe in a car for superior inferencing once we get the security problems worked out of it.
Yeah. Right, but that's a very focused engine too, right? It's not going to be like all of GPT, right? The model's going to be very tightly, very focused, right? And that's right, that difference between agentic AI, right? We're not going to let LLMs that hallucinate, as it's been pointed out, just like make decisions, right? We're going to see those agents first that are very focused on driving a car, operating a load balancer, right? Managing a switch. And the agentic AI will be more of a manager of those agents. And I think that's how we'll see that fly out because, you need to be really focused and tight and small in order to run in more environments. So we'll see, right, compression tighter focus, and then that will reduce some of that. Oh, I need 100,000 GPUs to actually run this. But the training, yeah, that's going to need a lot always.
Yeah, I think, look, the connected car one is really interesting, right? I've had my Tesla driving for me since 2018, and it drives 95% of the miles that I drive now.
Wow.
So I'm a believer in that, and I do not believe that you can, have a computer remotely pilot a car right now, although we have humans who remotely pilot those things all the time. So I think there's nothing that says that you couldn't have the compute somewhere else. You clearly can, right? We have pilots who pilot drones in, high performance fighter aircraft. So that's doable. But I will say these, actual messy biology metaphors often help a lot when we think about these AI things, right? And when you think about what, it was originally the economists who took these terms, but it's like system one thinking and system two thinking. And system one thinking are these basic reflex things. And that could be hitting a fastball, or it can be pulling your hand away from a stove when you touch something hot. You don't want to go send that command to the cloud. I 100% get it. But there's also a reason your body was designed where your brain isn't in your fingers, right? There's like one place that you're going to do this work, and it's neuron-wise a long way from your fingers, which is why, it had to push some decision-making to the edge. But that doesn't devalue the brain part. And that's the part that is, I think we're just going to, for the foreseeable future, and I can't foresee things in more than 5 years because this is a crazy time, but we're going to do a tremendous amount of that in the cloud. And when you look at the move to reasoning models, we're burning 1,000 times more tokens than we were to do kind of similar tasks a few weeks ago. So again, it's like trying to say I'm going to run O3 Mini on my home computer. No, you're not anywhere near that, and that's still pretty dumb.
I'll kind of go with both with what you said. So last week's episode, we talked about robotics and the VLA models, and that ties into your system one, system two thinking analogy, and so going to the DeepSeek article, if even those models that are the system one models are pretty darn complicated, right? If you look at like some of the robotic stuff, they're pretty complicated models that are in there manipulating the gears and the servos in the hands of these robots, and even that you had to used to have to go back to the central brain for. Now you can start doing that. So I'm not arguing that AGI is around the corner. That's a whole different debate for a different day. But I'm saying whatever it is that we think of as state of the art at a given moment, getting that to the edge, right? It's Moore's law. It's only a matter of time because that till that becomes fast enough that we can push at the edge. And in AI and with the hardware acceleration for AI, we are at the very, very steep part early in Moore's law, where there's that gap in performance, which is a gap in time between things going to the central part off to the edge, I think is pretty short. It could just be a matter of things that we think about doing in the cloud today could be very feasible to do on the client in 12 months. I'm not saying AGI will get there, don't get me wrong, but I'm thinking these sort of things, system one stuff, will get pushed there.
Do you think that we will see better code written by these AI as a result? Because it seems like that is a trend these days.
I take that personally. All right. I mean, really better code, like you don't like mine. Okay. I'm just saying it's good code. It's good code.
Yours may be good code, but for certain, this trend in vibe coding, I'm going to quote you, Lori. It's like a root canal. I can't wait. You sort of can wait. But the other thing about vibe coding, I will say also really quick, just kind of getting into it a little. Oh no, that wasn't the one I wanted to do. Say vibe coding again.
I love it. Mm-hmm.
So that's it seems to me that and the memes are just priceless in this. So I mean, just let me roll here for a second. This was another one. I love vibe debugging. Right? How is that happening? Also like this one, of course. For those of you that are just listening, this is a Batman and Robin meme. an experienced software developer versus
So
slapping the AI influencer?
Can we pause on this one?
Yeah.
Man, this is like my favorite topic these days. And I spend all my time trying to not be Homer Simpson yelling at Cloud about this one. But this is like some of the only arguments that I've let myself get dragged into on the internet in recent memory. Like, this meme is so wrong. It's ridiculous. Like, where did this vibe coding term come from? Came from Andrei Karpathy talking about the new way that he's interacting with LLMs to write software. Is Andrei Karpathy an amateur software developer who has come to this and is writing code for the first time because he has an LLM? No, he is the James Gosling of our time. He is like the most famous software developer of this decade. And he's the one who started this term. So I often get people who ask me, like, are programmers really using LLMs to write code? And I go, well, Gartner thinks it's like 50% of them, but Gartner's full of crap. It's 100%, period. Professional software developers all use LLMs to write code, period, full stop, done. Okay, let's get that out of the way. So most of the people making these memes have no idea what they're talking about. They're mostly security people who are trying to act like they know about software development when they don't know anything. And they're trying to get on their high horse and gatekeep things. And they're mostly, what they're making fun of, though, is younger people, or maybe people sort of crossing disciplines, who are able to develop custom software now with this assistance. Look, I used to be a good developer. I hung up my IDE a long time ago because I got too far down the management path. And all of a sudden, this is like re-unlocked my superpower, because the last language I knew how to program in was Java, and nobody does that anymore. And now it's like, honestly, I found a printout on the back of an attendance sheet from a game I wrote in 7th grade. And I'm like, oh God, it would be so cool to see this. So I took pictures of it with my iPhone. I gave it to ChatGPT with O3 Mini, and I said, would you rebuild this game in JavaScript for me? And it did in like 5 seconds. And I've been doing increasingly complicated things ever since. So I think we need to really understand the fullness of how software development is being transformed by these things, and know that there's a bunch of amazing things going on. As a result, there's going to be a bunch of dumb things going on. But just to wrap up my rant here, the stat I saw said the head of Y Combinator said it was something like 50% of the current Y Combinator class is generating 95% or more of their code with LLMs. This is not just 8th graders burning themselves, shipping insecure code and losing their AWS keys on the internet. This is like the way software is getting built, love it or not.
And I'm not disagreeing with that. I learned, right, I didn't know Python. When this all started, right, I had stopped, right, Java, yeah, that's my only certification. 1.1, by the way, in case anybody needed to know. It's like, learn this AI stuff. It's like, wait, it's all in Python. Okay, my 10-year-old knew Python. I didn't know Python. That's how bad it was. So I needed some like really fast, like get up to speed, right? Absolutely, right? Copilot and like, oh, okay, right? The basic constructs. It's just, right, getting the rest in. It's like, that was immensely helpful. Like, I got up to speed so much faster than I would have otherwise. And yeah, of course you're going to use it, right? Who isn't? I mean, and you don't have to use Stack Overflow. I mean, they've lost like 75% of their traffic now because AI is being used instead. And I think that's a good thing. And I think what's happened is vibe coding started, right? Your origin story, I will take your origin story. But what we're seeing is people attaching to this, just like the early HTML, right? Oh, I can make a markup file in an editor, and look, I'm a web developer. And you're like, wait, no. That's not how this works. It's not how it works at all. And I think that's what these memes are reacting to, is that segment of the people that are like, hey, I'm a developer now because AI wrote me some code.
Yeah. I'll give another analogy. I was talking to my wife about this the other day, and my wife's a lawyer. And, she's hearing like all professions, or how is this going to change law? And we're talking about, oh, well, it can write a lot of this contract. You give it the input and it can fill in a lot of the details and write that. But my wife, I was explaining vibe coding to her, and she goes, yeah. And then of course, we're going to have a human look at it and review it and see, does this make sense? And did I give it the right things, right inputs, and all these sort of things. And I was explaining how that is how vibe coding got started. As you said, that's the origin story. But the way it's getting used now, I was telling my wife, is that now we get people that aren't lawyers sticking in the stuff and taking what comes out and saying, there it is, there's your answer. And that is, I think, an abuse of vibe coding, you would say, but that abuse is this is anecdotal. Anecdotally seems like it's getting more and more common. Now, is it really or not? I think time will tell. And I spend half my time or more being a security guy these days. And the security guys are really scared that if that really ends up being true, the world will be very different.
Yeah. I will say, like, I spend 100% of my time being the security guy now, right? So I get it. And again, it was in the first version of the top 10 list that you can generate really insecure code with LLMs, package hallucinations and all sorts of things that we established early on. But really, if you look at it, when LLMs came out, forget just code, just using them in general, there were a bunch of people that said, ha ha, and made memes about how they hallucinate and this and that and the other thing, and said, you're stupid for using that. Or you can lean in and say, okay, this is limited, but I got to learn how to do it. And I think at the limit case, this is like the transition from assembly to high-level programming languages. There was a point at which I'm sure there were a bunch of people shaking their fists saying, if I can't read it off the punch card, it's not real code. And, if I can't look at the assembly, it doesn't count. And I think we're going through that transition where at some point people will look back and there will be a certain category of people, just like there are today, who are still programming in C and Rust and living near the metal because that's what they want to do, but it's a very small portion. And there are a lot more people who got enabled on writing in Python and JavaScript, and which is way far away from the middle. This is one big step up away from the metal. And one of the things that we need to do as a community is make these tools better, right? These tools need to generate better code. It's not good enough. They don't handle complexity well at the real limit of complexity when we're building real software, not just toys. So do these things need to get better? Absolutely. Do these things need to be like reinforced, trained on how to write secure code? Right now, they're just trained on generic crap from Stack Overflow. So you get what you get. But I think if we sit down in a sober way and say, what are these things great at and what do they suck at? And how do I make them better at this so that 1,000 times more people can write their own software? We're in for a renaissance in software development that would be amazing.
we've got actually, speaking of the community, we've got a comment, not a question, but I did want to just kind of show this here from Carl. So personally, for those of you that aren't watching but are listening, personally, AI has helped me go from pseudocode and a desired outcome to something that is usable. It is not perfect, but it gets me closer than Google searches alone would get me. I have to agree, personally, Carl, and thank you for tuning in, man. Love you.
Yeah, that's a great comment.
But it's true, and just to kind of to all the points that have already been made. For me, starting off with, and I think Python was my first one too, Lori. I was like, holy cow, I have to do this thing. And I don't know Python. The last thing that, I started learning was, oh boy, I can't even tell you what the last language I had to try to code in. But I just was able to pull something up and I took a look at it and it was kind of like, okay, I don't know if this is good. The thing that's cool though is, just learning a little bit from the top 10 and what we talked about in version 1 with over-reliance. I got a second set of eyes on it and said, okay, I don't know if this thing gave me something real. I do have a couple people that I know that know Python. And after I made my tweaks, I was able to just go and say, hey, does this make sense? And sure enough, it did. It did for what I was looking to do. Of course, what I was looking to do was not that complicated. We are seeing, however, in the industry, quite a bit of insecure code getting pushed out into production from this. So I do think while it may not be 100% of the time, I do think there's some validity to the complaints.
Yeah, the thing that jumped out to me when I did a little bit of research before this was that the code written by the LLMs will often break the project's code to fit a unit test rather than to fix the unit test when told to do so. And I think that's pretty telling of sort of the what can go wrong.
But by the way, one of the things I often say with this stuff is like, how much is that not like a human? How many software developers have went and made a refactor and all the tests broke, and what they did is I'm just chucking these tests. I'll get back to it later. Like, that's never happened in the history of programming. So is it okay that the LLMs do it? No. Do we need to train them to do better? Yes. But it's so human, right?
Yeah. And
I mean, it's emulating us, right?
And oversight, right? Even before AI, I would ask people, hey, does this make sense? Yeah.
It's what we started this conversation with. It's the excessive agency. It's not a problem to have it generate code. It's what do you do with that code that it generated? And I'll go back to another comment you made at the start of this conversation, Steve, which is that's often a PM decision, not a software decision. I agree with you. Here, whose decision is it? So again, through the security lens, there's a lot of just threat surfaces and things you think about as software engineering. And I think this trend, I agree with you. It's the next step of high-level languages. But it means that software engineering has to step back and say, what does a software engineer do? It isn't a software engineer writes code. A software engineer engineers software.
True.
Yeah, the writing the code, right? It's not, and then this is a critical difference that I think everybody has to get to in roles where like they think their whole value is in what they produce. I made a PowerPoint, I wrote a thing, right? That's not the value. The value is in the thoughts that went into it, right? AI can't decide, oh, I think I'll write an app today and it's going to do X, right? It doesn't have that kind of agency yet. And I never want to see that. But right, somebody's got to direct it. So the value is shifting up the chain too, right? It's about thinking like this would be a really good app. Let's go build it. Right. That is awesome. So we have to start thinking differently. It's not replacing humans. It is shifting the value up the chain, which is always what happens with new inventions, new technologies when they come in and get adopted. So I think it's okay. I don't want 50 million red button applications, right? Hey, I can build a red button. There you go. Like, do we need that? Do we need that noise? No. But using it to augment and accelerate, absolutely.
I think one of the things I've been talking to a lot of people about is what will shift as we, sort of move up stack here. And a lot of the experiments I've been doing, I've kind of taken this mind shift that, look, at one point in my life, I was the software developer. I was the guy writing the code. And at some point I became a product manager. And so, one way to say it is like, hey, I'm the product manager and I can ask the machine to write the code. And that's coming up with a better idea than the red button app. But where I got to is like, I don't even want to be the product manager. That's a lot of work, writing specs and tickets and stuff like that. So I created an agent out of ChatGPT that's the product manager. And I promoted myself to producer. I decided I'm Steven Spielberg making this movie. I don't need to direct it. I don't need to act in it, but I'm going to come up with the idea. I'm going to finance it. I'm going to hire the crew. Most of the crew is going to be AI agents. But, and then I've been talking to a lot of security people about the security implications of this. And, why do I not have an AppSec agent that is part of this flow, and like the whole thing is there. If we just want to go back and look at it and say, it's like, okay, product manager is going to do this. I'm going to read the spec. I'm going to review it. I'm going to have it tweak it till I get the thing that matches my vision. I'm going to hand that to the coding agent. That's going to write code till it's up and running and I can test it. And I like the feel of it. And then I'm going to run it through the AppSec agent and see if it's safe to deploy it. And you could see that life cycle coming together if we want to really step back and talk about how do we not just replace code generation, but how do we change the nature of a software development team.
Boy, it's funny because you talk about those different agents, and it makes me think, like, after it gets to the code agent, is it then going to go to the marketing agent, and then after that to the sales agent?
Absolutely.
And after that,
Look,
like,
drive up and down 101 in Silicon Valley. There's like 5 billboards for AI SDRs. Now, do I want robots calling me, asking me if I want to buy this new SaaS product? I'm not sure I do, but I don't want the human SDRs calling me either. So I think what we're going to have is much more, hopefully much more efficient sort of sales and marketing bots that are going to be able to better target things. And you're going to have your own buyer bots that are going to negotiate with them. And we'll see where that all goes. It'll be crazy.
So the technologist in me doesn't disagree with the vision, but I'm going to say that some of those things need they need higher level reasoning, right? If I think about writing, the reason that writing code came first, and some of it is bias on the part of the programmers, right? The people who wrote this knew how to write code, therefore that's what they programmed it to do. But there's also, it's a well-defined problem. It's got a formal language. You can structure that. Thinking about threat surfaces is a little harder. Like, what might a bad guy do with this? How creative can people get? And I'm not going to argue that you can't glean a lot by scraping what the world does today, and that's really right, being the stochastic parrot that LLMs are. They'll figure that out, but it'll be harder. Being a sales guy, I knew John Chambers, and it was like, he's a good sales guy. I'm waiting for John Chambers' bot. And so I agree with your vision, but I think that we're getting a little harder ahead of ourselves if we think that's right around the corner.
One of the things that I do I remind myself about this, and I remind others too, which is that Y Combinator stat is really telling. People are doing real things with teams of 5 developers that they would have used to do with 50. And that's reality. But you walk these tools into an existing enterprise code base, what we've seen is a lot of cases where the productivity uplift is 0. It's the tools are not up to the place where I walk it into a 1 million line enterprise code base that's grown up over 10 years, and this thing walks in and makes it better. So I think there are much different use cases from walking into the middle of making the F5 load balancer better versus I'm building a new thing from 0 to 1. And and it's a very big difference in task there.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, agreed. I'm all for making F5 load balancers better. That's of course.
Do you guys remember from the sales conference when, our old CTO, I'll just say that, would brag about how many hundreds of millions of lines of code is in TMM, and I would just cringe from the security angle. And so now it's like one person can't read all that, but you could throw it into an LLM, right? I mean, of course, there's all kinds of privacy and implications. I'm just hypothetically, right?
There's value for it as junior coder, in my opinion. And of course, we are kind of getting a little bit long on time here. We definitely before we kind of close up, though, I did want to say something. In our for those of you watching or listening, we do have a kind of a private chat that's that doesn't go out to the community when we do these live streams as well. And I did want to call out Byron here. I love Java, he said when it was mentioned before. And I did just want to say I worked with a guy who just shocked me. This guy wrote half of SIP at the protocol level. Like, this guy was a great coder, and he was a real Perl wizard also. This is in my sysadmin days, going way back. And one of the interesting things, I was just bashing on Java in IRC. I was just drilling on it, going, it's just the worst thing ever. It's bloated, it's slow. And he came on and goes, oh, well, that's interesting that you say that. I just recoded all of my Perl scripts in Java, and now they're compiled, and they're all approximately 300% faster. Like, wow, holy cow. So I came to
I just remember when I went to computer science, it'd be like late in the lab, and I thought I was ready to go, and then it's like segmentation fault. And I'm like, oh my God, really? Yeah, with Java, you don't get into those precarious situations, right?
So Aubrey, I don't know if I ever told you this story, but I started my first AI company in 1992. And by 1995, somebody had invented the World Wide Web. And my AI buddies and I were all looking at each other going, we're screwed. I don't understand this internet thing. So we folded up the company and said, we better go get jobs. And my buddy Tom found a 5-week contracting gig at Sun Microsystems to work on the JDK. And he said they need 2 people. So I said, let's take it. So we went over on a 5-week contract to work on, JDK 1.1. And, he and I wrote a lot of Swing together back in the day. We had 2 workstations in a closet. I left 17 years later. The flip side of that is, a couple of years ago, I was working at a cybersecurity company, and this AI thing comes back around with ChatGPT. A few months later, I said, I got to quit my job and really figure out this AI thing.
I got a job.
And it was like I was just 32 years too early the first time on this AI train.
I love the symmetry there.
Yep.
I love it. I mean, that's just like
History
beautiful.
repeats.
That's beautiful.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a great discussion, honestly, and I do think we got to close it up. Before we do, I did want to mention something. We at OWASP, we have an event that's actually happening. So for anyone in our community who happens to be in the New York City area on the 1st, coming up, right, April 1st in New York City, we are having an Insecure Agents hackathon. So, that to me sounds like a blast. I did interview Ali Howe, who is running that event, and it sounds like an amazing time. If you have insecure agents that you've coded, bring them to the event. Right? We'll go through them and we'll talk about, did they meet kind of some of the criteria that we put forth in our guidance or not? And if not, then we'll help you code one insecurely right while you're on site. That's the whole point, just to make sure that we've got insecure coding practices under wraps. And with that, I did want to say thank you so much for coming, Steve. We really appreciate you being here.
Oh, thanks for having me on. This was so much fun. It was great to get to see everybody.
That's a blast. And of course, Lori, Ken, Byron, thank you so much. And thank you, community. We couldn't keep doing this stuff without you. And actually, Carl put something else up there. I'm gonna squeeze it in. Okay, here, just in case. AI faces the challenges we as humans face, which is keeping up with newer versions and the paradigms they bring with them that fix the sins of the past, so to speak. RAG can help if set up. Okay, I'm going to agree with that. RAG's helpful. And with that note, thanks again, community, and we'll see you next time on AI Friday. Bye.
We hope you liked this instantiation of AI Friday. We'll be instantiated again next week. Same time, same place, and hope to again infer with you. Before we depart, promptly subscribe for all our content and click like to let us know you enjoyed AI Friday.